So I guess if you're watching this, you're trying to figure out how to change the oil on your DRZ400. I've decided to go ahead and do this video because I've not found a lot of great videos out there. It seems like, I'm sure there are some. I haven't done an exhaustive search, but seems like there's a lot of people that glaze over, and I like glaze over a lot of the facts. I like details, so that's why I've decided to do one by the book. So the book I'm referring to is this one here, The Climbers, for the DRZ. This covers the S and the E model and the SM model. The oil change should be the same for all three. That's my S model right there. That's a 2009 DRZ400S. So this book, I know it says goes to 2012, but I mean, they haven't changed. So it'd work on the newest ones like 2022s. So if you like working on your DRZ, great book to have. I think I bought it on Amazon, I think. You can do a Google search on it, the Climber's Manual for the Suzuki DRZ400. So what you're going to need before we get started is you're going to need some tools. I'll go ahead and show you what tools you're going to need. So down here I have, since we're doing it by the book, we're going to do some torque. We've got some torque wrenches here. I got a 3/8 torque wrench, quarter drive torque wrench for the really fine side cover bolts, which this is too big. This doesn't go down low enough. A couple ratchets. I got a 3/8 ratchet and a quarter drive ratchet with some extensions. I have a 14mm socket, a 12mm socket, a 10mm socket, and I don't think I'll need it, but I threw an 8mm socket just in case. You'll also need some brake parts cleaners, not bad to have around. Some shop towels, clean up, oil seems to always get everywhere no matter how careful I'm always, how careful I'm at it, they always seem to spill it. Let's see what else. Couple quarts of oil. I'm using I'm using the Honda GN4 4-stroke motor oil, 1040 SJ weight. That's the weight Suzuki recommends for this bike. So you'll need 2 quarts of whatever oil floats your boat. Actually, the oil change holds just slightly less than 2 quarts. An oil filter. And some of these parts here, if you really want to be thorough. This is the O-ring. Here's the part number. O-ring behind the oil filter. I'll point that out when we do that. Here's the oil filter housing cover O-ring. There are 2 different size crush washers here. This is the crush washer to the bolt on the frame. That little number down at the bottom is the part number. These are Suzuki part numbers. This is for the drain bolt on the oil pan. It's slightly bigger. That's why there's 2 different sizes. I generally don't change these all that often. You can if you want to go by the book and change every one of these things here. I generally will do these, the O-rings and the crush washers, maybe once a year. So if you noticed, I don't really use the best oil out there on the market. This is good oil, but I generally change the oil every 1,000 to no more than 1,500 mile intervals. So that's more than adequate. You'll also need, you will need a way to center the bike. For doing the oil change, I use a rear wheel stand. Got this from Harbor Freight a couple years back. I think it was like 29 bucks. Somewhere in that ballpark. Maybe 39. 29 or 39 bucks. But that's pretty good. That's a pretty good score right there. So what you're supposed to do to the book, buy the book, is level the bike out, which I've done, warm it up, which we haven't done yet. So those are really the first two steps. So what you could do is warm it up however you like, take it for a ride. I just generally let it idle for like 10-12 minutes. The fan will kick on right here, and then I'll be able to feel the heat coming off the engine. So what I have to do, and you may or may not have to do this, is I have to remove this skid plate right here. I have an aftermarket skid plate. I generally have to remove this. So, I mean, there is a hole, doesn't quite 100% line up, so I don't want to make a mess, so I always drop it. It's a good idea. Then it gives me time to get in there and clean the bottom of the engine anyway. If you have the OEM factory small skid plate, there is a cutout for that, so you don't need to drop that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start the bike, let it idle for about 10-12 minutes, get it nice and warm, and then I'll get back to you. We'll pick it up there. Oh, one last thing. The reason why you warm the bike up is because the contaminants in the engine oil and in the engine. You heat the oil, you heat the engine up, which makes the oil flow out a lot better. So you're getting more contaminants from inside the engine out when the oil is warm, and it flows. You get more of the oil out compared to being stone cold when you do it. So that's the reason why you heat the oil up. Anyway, once it's warmed up, I'll get back to you and we'll start going into detail about how this works. All right. All right, we are ready to change the oil now. So the bike is level and secure with the rear wheel stand. The engine's warm, so the first thing by the book they want us to do is loosen our oil drain filler cap, which is right here by your steering neck. Ooh, that's tight. Trying to do this one-handed. Good Lord, that's tight. All right, that right there. We got to loosen that. Okay, we got to take that out. All right, want us to take that out. Put that over here. And I'm assuming that's so there's no vacuum created. All right, remember I said I make a mess. So, well, you're also going to need something to catch your waste oil. So what we're going to do, I guess we'll take the frame bolt out first, which is located right there by the hot muffler. Remember I said this is hot, so don't burn yourself on that when doing this. So that is a 12mm socket. So I'm going to use this, an extension, to stay away from the hot exhaust. So I'm going to put you guys back here so you don't get oil on the camera, and I'm going to attempt to not make a mess. But we'll see how that goes. Good night. Alright, that's loose. Let's put, hopefully I hit it just. Whew, got it. Without making too much of a mess. Alright, there's my drain bolt. Alright. Alright, what I like to do, and according to the book, is you can clean this with your rag. So there is the crush washer on here, which is, you probably can't see it, but it's on there. Suppose we could go ahead and put a new one on there, since the title of this video is Buy the Book. Could skip it. I generally do skip this. I don't change these all that often. Like I said, maybe once a year. So, well, it is the new year, so I guess I could go ahead and change them, and we'll change them again next year. I change my oil about every, on average, 1,200, 1,300 miles, somewhere in that ballpark. Suzuki recommends every 4,000 miles, so I guess if I was going to run it that long, I'd buy a lot better oil, maybe something synthetic, motorcycle synthetic. Alright, so the engine, the oil's pretty warm. It's not, probably ran the bike for about 13-14 minutes idling here. So I'm going to go ahead and put this back in. Now this oil change doesn't cover the special filter, which is connected to this right here. But if you guys want, down the road, I could make a video of me showing you how to take this out and clean the little stainless steel filter that's in there. It's not really recommended by Suzuki for the oil change. Okay. Alright, so we're going to move to the back drain plug, the oil pan drain plug, which is right there. Set you guys back. That is a 14mm, so I gotta grab the 14mm socket. Let me go get that. Alright, so I'm going to slide this back over here. And bring that. This will have a magnet on it. Ooh. See, no matter how no matter how careful I am, I always make a mess. All right, so this one's got a magnet, and you're supposed to clean this. You could use a rag or brake clean, but I always check this magnet to see what's in it. This one looks pretty clean. Let that drain. This is dripping right there. Well, I kind of need a wider oil catch disposal can here, or disposal bin. Alright, so as you can see, there's the magnet. It's clean. Here's the crush washer on this, so I guess we'll change that as well. Alright, so what I'll do is we'll go ahead and change those washers. I'll let that continue to drip while we do that. Okay, we're back. The engine oil is drained. We've got the plugs here. This is to the oil pan. This is the frame to the frame. As you can see, I pulled these crush washers back. They could be a little hard, so hard to get off. So what you have to do is kind of get a little flathead screwdriver and pry up until you can get it to catch a thread. This one's being a little tough, so I'm going to gently grab the edge of the washer and I'm going to spin it off of the bolt. Being very careful not to touch the threads of the bolt. Just come on. Let's see if I can get it by hand. Okay, it's loose enough. Alright, there's the old one off the frame drain bolt. Now the plug for the oil pan, that one seems to be coming off by hand without spinning it up the threads. And there they are. Alright, that's off. Alright, so as you can see, there's two different sizes here. This is for the frame drain bolt, and this is to the engine oil pan bolt. It's larger, that's why the crush washer is larger. There is a certain way you put these on. There is a concave and a convex side, I guess that's how you would say it. You want the tapered side. Can you see that on the camera? There's two different sides. It's like a cup. So you want, we'll do this one. You want the tapered side facing the bottom of the bolt like that. So when you tighten it down, it crushes down, creates a seal. See the taper side's down on that. Same thing, we'll put that down. So that's how it should look. I'll show you the picture in the book. I had to break the book out because we're doing it by the book. So here is a good picture of how it should be, if that makes sense. Hopefully that shows up on video. Okay, so we'll dispose of those. We'll put the new ones back in. So let's go ahead and do these. The oil pan one, this is torque-wise, this is 15 foot-pounds, and the frame one is 13 foot-pounds. So let's go ahead and do that. I'll go ahead and run these up in there, and then I'll set the torque wrench, and we'll do that. Be right back. Okay, let's torque. I've already run those up in there by hand. I've got this torque wrench set to 13 foot-pounds, so let's go ahead. Oops, wrong size. Normally, I wouldn't use a torque wrench, so I got a pretty good feel of what it should be. So it's crushing that new washer down. It's going to take a little bit more. Alright, there's 13 foot-pounds. Hold it. Okay. Set this to 15. Alright, that's set to 15. Let's do it. Let's do this one. Probably don't need this long extension. Hopefully you can see this. It's not all that critical. I'm sure you can figure out how to tighten a bolt, but just demonstrating using a torque wrench. And there it is, 15 foot-pounds. Okay, there. You might want to clean up any oil that you've spilled at this point on the exhaust. And what we'll do next, now the oil's drained, new washers, drain plugs are put back in, so we'll go and remove the oil filter. There's a couple tricks about that, so we'll get back to that. Alright, so we got the drain plugs all back in and torqued. So what we're going to do now is we're going to replace the oil filter. So you walk around to the right side of the bike. Down here on the right side of the engine, you'll see this cover with these 3 acorn nuts. You also, if you'll notice, might be a little dark, there is an arrow. This cover has to go back in the same orientation. So remember that. Arrow points up. All right, so the one trick that's not really in the book and no one ever talks about, but what I do personally is, if you look down here, you see this line connected to this bolt down here. This is a drain for your oil filter cavity. I see so many videos where people just take this off and oil runs all down the side of their engine and onto the floor. So this is a nice little, you can drain this before opening this cover. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. These are 10 millimeter and this is 14 millimeter. So I'm going to go ahead and take this off first. Let's see if I'll put you over here where you can see what I'm doing. I think you should be able to see there. So 14 millimeter, break that free. And we'll let that drain. Quite a bit of that cavity where the oil filter sits. It's quite a bit of oil. This also has one of those crush washers, the same size, if you're wondering if you want to replace it. If you do it this way, it is the same one as the oil pan drain plug. Now, that looks pretty good. We'll go ahead and put that back in. Torque spec on this, I haven't really been able to find one, but it's going into a magnesium case. So I'm thinking it's somewhere around 12 foot-pounds. It's not much. Doesn't take much. I just give it, I bottom it out by hand, and then I just give it a eighth turn. There. That's all it needs. It's a magnesium case. Don't do much more than that. Strip that. That could be very easily stripped out. Alright, so we're actually going to remove the actual oil filter now, which is behind this cover. So these are 10 millimeter nuts. Just loosen all three. So when you take this cover off, it's sealed with an O-ring. You'll see it in a second, but there's a spring as well. Now, put these off to the side. There should be a little bit more oil come out of there. Go ahead and hold it. The cover is spring loaded. Let's remove that. And there you go. There's the spring. There's the O-ring. So what we'll do, doing it by the book, is we'll wipe this up. We'll peel that O-ring out of there, and we will put a new O-ring on. So let's remove the filter. Hopefully you guys saw all that. There's the cover with the O-ring and the spring. We're going to replace that O-ring. Here's the filter. So there's going to be an O-ring behind the filter. So we'll just reach in here and kind of wiggle this thing out. And there it is. Now, the filter has one hole on one side. It can only go on one way. Hole goes in toward the engine, and if you look back, you probably can't see it. So there it is. There's the O-ring. So what I like to do is I like to take a clean rag and wipe any residual oil out of this before I install the new oil filter. So let's go ahead and do that. I'll go ahead and do that. I'll get everything cleaned up and I'll get back to you in just 1 second. Okay, here's the new oil filter, and I already went ahead and cleaned the oil filter housing out with a shop towel, and I've replaced the O-ring on the cover and the O-ring behind the oil filter. So I have them over there already. Here's the part numbers. Here's the smaller O-ring. Here's the cover O-ring, if you are so inclined to do that. Now I don't do that every time. If you do replace them, just take a little fresh motor oil and dab on them. So if you can see, hopefully you can see inside there, I've gone ahead and fit the new O-ring onto that little lip. I'm going to put the oil filter in now. It just basically just kind of sits right there in the hole. I've got the new filter and the new O-ring on this. I've lubed it with some fresh motor oil. Let's put the cover on. There's the arrow. It goes up just like that. That goes on like that. And I'm going to go ahead and put the acorn nuts on, and we're going to tighten it to 8 foot-pounds, which is 96 inch-pounds. So let's do that. Hopefully you can see. Up like that. So I'll hold that in by hand. I suppose I should move this so I don't want to drop an acorn nut down in there. Alright. So by the book, you're supposed to tighten these one at a time, kind of equally go around. You can feel that they're bottomed out by hand. Doesn't take much. So got my torque wrench set to 96 inch-pounds. A little bit there, a little bit on that one, a little bit on that one, that one. Okay, that's okay, that's it. That's all there is to it. 8 foot-pounds, 96 inch-pounds. All right. And so the only thing really left is to add oil to this thing. So that'll be next. And we'll get back to that. Okay, it's time to put some oil in this thing. I didn't mention earlier in the tool section, you need a funnel or something. So let's go ahead and fill this thing up. The way I like to do it, bring you over here, grab you. So there's the filler hole. I just set my funnel right in there, and I'm going to grab my oil. Over here. So I'm going to put you right here. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing. Alright. Alright, so what I like to do is I'll put about 1.5 quarts in it to start with. Let's just do this. Just about 1 quart. And after I get 1.5 quarts, I'll check and see where I'm at. And if it's near the full mark, alright, that's just about that's 1 quart right there. We'll go ahead and call that 1 quart. So I'm going to add about half of this one. That's about half. Okay. Remove. Got the bike kind of in a tight area right here. Clean the dipstick off. Okay, let's remove the funnel real quick. So, when you check your oil level, it should be in this range right here. Alright? So, that's your high range, that's your low range. Somewhere in this cross hatching is where you want your oil to fall. I generally run it a little higher in the cross hatching, closer to the fullest mark. So what you do is you don't screw it in, you just push this thing in like that. You do not screw it in to check the oil on these DRZs. Pull it out. And there is absolutely nothing on the stick yet. So let's add more oil. Plus it's fresh oil, it might be a little hard to see. Go down in there. Alright, there should be some on the stick by now. Aha, there we go. Probably. Alright, so as you can see, it's well over, it's actually right there. So it's just past the top of the full mark. But I know I haven't completely filled this thing up yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to screw my oil dipstick back in. I'm going to wipe the oil off my hands. Start this thing up. I'm going to let it run for just a minute, not even with the new oil circulate through the new oil filter and all the oil passages. Just a minute. Check it again now. Clean rag, by the way. Let's give it a quick wipe. Stick it back in there without screwing it in. And okay, you guys can't see it, but I can. It went from way up here, and it's just barely touching. So now this is where we start adding oil very slowly, just a little at a time, just a gulp, because it'll come up real fast. So we'll do a little there, get the dipstick out, sure that's clean, check. Alright, now I came up, I'm right there where my thumbnail is, just barely, I'm into the lower hatch mark. Still not quite enough. Alright, that may have done it. Another glug. Alright, let's check it again. clutch oil. Where am I at? I'm right here, almost halfway. One more glug. Right, just over halfway now. Okay, technically you could stop right here. So if you read the manual, it says they like it closer to the full hash mark, which would be at the very top of the hash, and where it's just slightly over halfway. So I'm going to give it, technically it's fine right here, but since we're doing it, I'm going to give it one more glug and bring it up just a little more. Glug. Okay, where are we at? Oh, we are right exactly at the top of the hash. So I'm going to stop right there. It is right exactly at the top of the hash. That's good enough. That's, if I went any more, it would be over full. Put that back. And that's it. Oil change done. All right. Well, pretty simple. I generally don't go, when I do the oil change, usually no one's watching, and it's about a 15-20 minute ordeal. Kind of drug this out. So I don't know how long the end video is going to be. Hopefully not more than 20 minutes. But it was very thorough, torque specs, everything was in sequence. You do it once or twice, you'll have it down, and add and subtract things you might want to do on your own. Do I generally use a torque wrench and stuff? No, I got a pretty good feel for the torque for 13 and 15 foot-pounds and 8 foot-pounds. So don't really need the torque wrench, but that is the spec if you ever wanted to know. Again, if you're ever going to do any work on your DRZ, the Climber's Manual, great little resource to have. Tells you just about everything you want to know about this bike. From maintenance items like this oil change to full-on engine rebuild. So that's really all I got to say. There's nothing really else to do other than wipe a little bit of oil up. If you'd like to see more of this type of stuff, more maintenance items on the DRZ, I pretty much know this bike inside and out, except minus splitting the cases, which that's about the only thing I haven't done to these bikes, which probably one day I will. If you'd like to see any type of in-depth tutorial on changing a tire on these, to tightening the chain, to changing the chain, cleaning the air filter, changing the air filter, bleeding the brakes, changing the brake pads, let me know. Put it down in the comments. So again, hope you liked it. If you find this video helpful, please like and subscribe. Bye.